Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Today, we're going to take a look at this 3-in-1 welder by Vevor. It'll do MIG, it'll do lift arc TIG, and it'll do stick. And it's pretty affordable. So, we're going to take a look at it, test it out, see if it's any good, and I'll report back at the end of the video. So, let's go! Alrighty, there's a whole whack of things I enjoy in tool stores. Cordless tools, wrenches, pliers, crazy little things, and welders. And I'm always excited to have a chance to check out another type of welder. I have a TIG and I have a MIG. I don't like stick, I don't do stick, but I do a lot of TIG. And I also have oxyacetylene because I'm a little old school. Anyways, this thing came my way. Vevor contacted me, asked if I'd be interested in checking this machine out. So I am, just for you. And it is interesting. The TIG torch here is kind of an old school thing. It basically has a volume knob for gas flow, and that's it. There's no foot pedal control or thumb wheel control. It is what it is, which is probably why it keeps the cost down. The whip for the MIG is a little different. I took it to a couple welding shops and said, have you ever seen anything like this before? And it seems like if you ever have a problem with this whip, you're going to have to go back to Vevor to get a replacement. The liner inside looks pretty common. The tips are common, but the MIG whip itself is a little odd. The TIG torch does use components the same as I have on another welder at the school. My TIG at home has a water-cooled torch, so it's slightly different, but the one at work is an air-cooled torch, and the TIG components seem pretty much the same. The MIG nozzle is a little weird, and it took me some figuring out. It's got this coil spring that holds it on, and it sort of threads on, but it kind of slips off. It was a little different. However, it worked. Couple neat features with this. It's got a cable out the front to help you decide for electrode positive or electrode negative. The whip threads in fairly nice. The ground cable is those little, I think they're DIN plugs. You just stick them in and give them a quarter turn or whatever. It does have a hose to hook to a regulator. There is no regulator included in the welding kit, but it does give you a spool of flux core. No. Nice that they give you a pair of sunglasses to enjoy your welder out in the sun. Don't use that for any form of welding that you're going to do with this welder at all. That's just not the way to go. Get a mask. Get a full face mask. Even the cheap ones that go for about $100 are pretty good. I wanted to see what it looked like inside, so we'll take it apart. And I'm not an electronic engineer, but I am a little leaning towards the OCD world of things, so I want to see what it looks like inside. And it looked okay. It seemed to be relatively well assembled. It was tidy, at least. It didn't look like a whole bunch of stuff just thrown in there. It looks like someone's put some effort into designing the layout and making it look good. And often, if it looks good, it is pretty good. Most of the components all in here seem to be Chinese components, which is fine. And I believe this is an inverter machine, which has a whole lot less garbage inside. I like that button feature to feed the wire through without wasting all your gas. Uses Lincoln style tips. Has a cool tool for snugging up your tips, and I loaded this with flux core MIG just to give it a go because I didn't have a regulator to make this thing work. Nice that they included that. So I'm running this on 110 volt just to see. I've never done flux core MIG before, so it was an experience. So to convert it to gas, there's a barb here. I was kind of expecting the right little fitting on here, but I guess at this price point, the barb is going to work. They do give you a hose, but I don't have that fitting on my regulators. This didn't come with a regulator. I did take one of my MIG hoses and I just cut off the barb because I figured I could stick this on here. What I'm going to do is not use this hose, and I'll just use my extra hose here and make that fit. I'm going to need a hose clamp. Oh, put a hose clamp up there. And none of you guys told me? Got the gas hooked up. Let's change the spool. Now in my welder at home, I really like to use 023 wire. It just gives me finer control over the wire speed, but my MIG has like 4 heat settings. Hot, hotter, not quite hot enough, and still not enough. So I kind of fine tune it with the wire speed. This one is infinitely variable, which is kind of cool. So I tried it with the 023. Okay, now flux core, you want the electrode to be negative. But MIG, you want the ground to be negative and the electrode to be positive. So you got to switch these. Convenient that this is on the outside. I like that. Snug, snug, that should work. Let's see if it explodes. So this will do 035 and 030, but it won't do 023, which I prefer to run. So it uses the same roller as my other welder, and I can do 025 on that. Interestingly, these are stamped wrong. Like the side you should see, the number you should see corresponds to the opposite side, the groove that it's actually running. So 025 is this narrow groove, and the 035 is that fat groove. This one, which it comes with, has labeled 1.0, which relates to this groove, and the 0.8, which relates to this groove. So this isn't common. It's not the way it's typically done. But I can't run 023 on here, so I'm going to switch to this guy off my other welder and see if that works. There we go, bro. But I need to change to another tip, because that's my 035 tip. So if you're going to do a lot of flux core, you really should have a nozzle like this, which would go on the end. Probably not on this whip, but it would go on the end if you're using flux core. That one came off my other welder. This did not come with 023 tips, but it does use a Lincoln. Okay, weird. So the tip for this welder kind of looks like a Lincoln style tip, and it kind of looks like a Miller style tip, but the threads are Lincoln. So let's see if my Lincoln style tip will fit in here. If it does, and it does, I'm winning. So it doesn't quite seat the same, but I'm sure it's going to be okay. So I do have the I can use a tip. I don't like how this doesn't stay centered. You thread it on, it's a little crooked like that, and then you just got to give it a shove and recenter it. I don't like that. All right, let's close her up, see if it works. Yeah. Okay, got that going. I like the burn back feature because I'm not getting a ball on there. So if you bugger up the threads, it's 6x1. Okay, so this is 1/8 inch. Definitely a nice bead. It did come through the other side, so it's getting hot. If this is a 270, it should be able to do 0.250 pretty acceptably. So I've got 2 pieces of 1/4 inch. I'm going to run a bead on one side and then I'll weld the two together and see what I get. So this was on 220 volts and the 023 wire, and it would weld along fine and then just kind of quit. And the wire had a tendency to burn back into the tip. And I went through a couple tips playing around with this, but it never really found its happy spot. It did seem to put a fair bit of heat in the metal. I did take this T-joint and I cut it with a bandsaw and I sanded and polished the edge. And then, like a lot of the welding videos online, they put some acid on it. And you can see how far it etched, or not how far it etches the metal, and you can see how far it burns into for penetration. And the only acid I had was hydrosulfuric acid, which I put on the ends and then forgot about it. So now it's horribly rusty and kind of hard to see what it did. It did look like it gave you reasonable penetration, though. So when I welded this 1/4 inch with the welder on full blast, I had to have the wire feed on full blast, and I still ended up with a fair bit of the bead balling up on the end of the tip, which usually means not enough wire speed. So I think my fondness for 023 wire is the issue. So I do happen to have a spool of 035 that I really use just for TIG welding, small beads. So I'm going to put that in and see if that makes a difference. I'll keep the 023 for my other welder. Changing the spools, just like any other welder, there's no magic here. I do like that little red push button to help feed the wire through. That's a sweet feature on this welder. I wish I had it on the other one. Although I bet with some ingenuity and a soldering gun, I could probably adapt that in my other welders. I should go look. Probably why they didn't give you one of these that holds 023. So I'm taking this one out, put it back on my other welder, and I'll put the original back in. So 035 should be this 1.0. But the groove's on the wrong side, so I got to make sure I put it in the other way. The welder came with some 035 tips. I just put them back on, and it worked out fine for me here. I'm using MIG pliers. I don't think I did at the beginning because I couldn't find my MIG pliers, and then I found them with my MIG. Go figure. Crazy looking tool. Looks like you find it from a dollar store for cheap, and you're like, wow. And if you act now, you get these free Ginsu knives. But MIG pliers are like one of the 7 wonders of the universe. I love them. I have actually 2 because I love them so much. So this is like 50% bigger. Let's try half of that, see what happens. The 035 wire was much better with this welder, at certainly at the higher end of the voltage range. Much better than 023. That's full bore on 3/8 steel. I'm kind of happy with the wire feed on that one. It's not bad. A lot of soot, but whatever. It's not bad. Did another T-weld with this, which I also cut in half, and I also put the hydrosulfuric acid on, and also now have rusty metal. So I don't really have a whole lot to show with that. Did seem to go okay. Nicer with a fatter wire. Well, I don't like that, but I've never done this before. That's not bad. I'm not actually complaining about that at all. You don't really get much in the way of post flow here, so I don't know how you deal with that. But I'm not really complaining as much. You got to run electrode negative. It's delicate to try and get it started, but I don't have any experience with this. I don't like the end. I'm scared at the start. But the welding itself is, like, I'm not complaining. That's okay. Let's try full fantasy here. 220 is what it says it'll give me. This could be exciting. So it comes with a 1/16 electrode, which I think is a little bit, well, okay, it's a 1/16 collet for an electrode. I don't think it came with any tungsten, which I think 1/16 is a little bit on the thin side for something of this range. I have a welder at work that only comes with 3/32. At home with my TIG, I use everything, 1/8, 3/32, 1/16. It depends what I'm doing. 3/32 are pretty good all around. 16th is a little on the small side, but it didn't destroy the tungsten running it at full bore. So for TIG, you have it in the middle spot here, and this seems to be your current. Normally, with TIG, that's going to be kind of related to the thickness of the metal. So in theory, we can get down to 39 thousandths, and we can go up to 220 thousandths. I just melted a hole through 3/16, which is 375 thousandths. So I guess if you linger, you can put a hole in it. I don't know if this is 220 amps. It says current. I'm hoping. But it does certainly go nice and low, and you can probably do some decent sheet metal with it if you got the voltage set right. That'll take some trial and error, because you don't really have any current control. Once you commit, you're running with what you have. So I guess that's okay. Comes down to a price point, I guess. I've never done scratch start lift TIG before, so it totally did not like electrode positive, but it was a lot happier on electrode negative. It's okay, it's not bad. It will do your TIG for you. It's better than no TIG, but there are better TIGs, but they're going to come at a higher price. So this changes the numbers, but I don't know if that affects the TIG at all. I guess I should try it and find out. Let's set it to here, and I had that full. Let's try it not full and see if it does anything. The manual doesn't tell me anything about TIG. There's actually sweet nothing listed in the manual for TIG, so you're kind of on your own, which always makes for some good experimentation. Wear safety protection. I'm wearing gloves. Couldn't tell you what the difference made with that. It was pretty much the same. I'd say there's no difference. So this will do MIG, this will do TIG, this will also do stick. I hate stick welding. I can't stand stick welding. It is not my favorite at all. I teach it at work. Kids enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. It's got the little clampy thing, which feels simple. And this just clips in at whatever angle you're comfortable with using. Whatever works for you. I tend to hold it this way because that's comfortable for my hand. We'll give it a go, see what it does. not happy with that. It stops partway through. Why? No, I don't like this at all. I'll try 220. Slightly too hot. I've mentioned I'm not good at it, mentioned I don't like it, but it actually, stick welds about as good as the ones we have at work, so I'm pretty pleased with that. My feeling with this welder, and my conclusion, if you will, is at its price point, it's a decent welder. Like, this thing retails, as of this video, 400 bucks Canadian. With that, you've got a MIG that can definitely do 1/4 inch, allegedly bigger than 1/4 inch. It did okay for me. It'll run 110 and 220 without an issue. It will do DC TIG, albeit lift arc or scratch start, but it does TIG and it's okay. Does MIG, does flux, does stick welding. It does it. So if you're looking to get into a welder that does, it's a good 3-in-1. I don't have any complaints. If you're a homeowner or a hobbyist and you want to have something that will do some decent welding for you, not bad. Then maybe that's the price point for you, where you got to wrestle with the quality that you want with what you can afford. It's not a bad buy-in. For the price point that this thing is built for, you're getting a decent unit. There we go. Thanks for watching. Take care. Subscribe.